For the Tea Party has a stranglehold on the Republican leadership. Speaker Boehner helpless against the 87 freshman members of his party, members driven by that ideology the president spoke of. No new taxes, not even for the most fortunate among us, not a penny. Members like Representative Joe Walsh of Illinois, a frequent guest on this broadcast, but one who may very well be sadly off base.
Secretary Geithner knows August 2nd comes and goes. There's plenty of money to service our debt.
But
Martin,
Mr. Walsh, that isn't what Secretary Geithner is saying. With the greatest respect, he's saying it would be, quotes, a disaster and that failure is not an option.
In fact, both Standard & Poor's and Moody's warned today that the US may very well lose its AAA rating if nothing gets done. And the consequences for the average American, already reeling from a recession, could be catastrophic. For more on the dangers of not getting a deal done before the United States defaults on its obligations in August, I'm delighted to welcome Jim Cramer, host of CNBC's Mad Money. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Martin. Boy, are you spot on in everything you just said about what's going to happen?
Well, I was going to put, that's very sweet of you, but Fed Chairman Bernanke warns of, and I'm quoting him, a huge financial calamity. Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner says failure is not an option. And yet the congressman you just heard says all of that is hyperbole and exaggeration. So I'm coming to you, Jim, to tell us how serious will matters become if an agreement is not reached by the August deadline?
Well, I think we have to distinguish among a couple of things, a couple of asset classes. For stocks, if you have high-quality stocks with good dividends, I'm not sweating the program. Not that bad. Gold is actually going to go up a tremendous amount, but the dollar should plummet and interest rates should go up highly. Why is that? Unlike what the Republicans seem to realize, we don't fund our debt. Our debt is funded overseas. And the people who fund our debt, they listen to these rating agencies. And we're no different from Greece or Italy. We're no different from Spain or Portugal, despite the president's protestations, when you get a debt downgrade.
So in reality, drawing down from what you've just said, distilling the sense of this, it would be catastrophic. Mr. Geithner is right. Mr. Bernanke's accurate when they say it would be catastrophic.
They're real smart guys, and they have no agenda. I know that sounds strange. I know that people say, well, he's the Treasury Secretary, but, he was a Republican Treasury Secretary. I know that people think that Ben Bernanke's got to be in the pocket of the president. He's a Republican guy. I mean, these guys are technocrats, okay? And they understand the way flow of funds works. They've watched Europe be crippled by just these issues. You know what they're really worried about, Martin? They're worried about the IMF coming here. They're worried that the International Monetary Fund's going to have to bail us out. I'm not kidding. When you get backstage with them, which is what I fortunately have the ability to do, yes. What they see is that we are so far away from showing any discipline that it would not shock them if we continue on this collision course, not just the debt ceiling, but a fundamental budget, and now fundamental budget problems that have to be addressed. 4 or 5 years from now, we're going to have a funding problem. I mean, a real funding problem. I'm not talking about an artificial one.
So, Jim, are all the major financial institutions also calling for an agreement? Is this something that all the major institutions want to see done and dealt with?
Well, I would distinguish it this way. All the grown-ups want it. All the people who are parochial enough to think that we fund things in our country and that whatever we do stays in America, they don't seem to understand what they're playing with. This is not the United States of 1960, 70, 80, or even 90, okay? This is a United States that is heavily indebted, that is not regarded as being a responsible player in the world stage anymore. And as much as we love our country, and we all do, we should recognize that the Chinese have a lot more to say about what our interest rates are than we do. Indeed. That's a fact of life.
The president today said that in addition to the government being unable to send out something like 80 million checks, he also suggested that interest rates could go up. Now, is that really possible, given that Ben Bernanke has held them down for so long?
Well, Ben Bernanke is going to start backing away from that. As long as we don't have that much loan demand in this country, it's unlikely that rates spike. It is likely that the dollar could go down a lot. How does that impact us? Well, you'd say, unless we go overseas, it doesn't matter. Once again, what I am focused on is the longer-term implications of our country being an irresponsible, and yes, may I quote the late great President Nixon, great being in quotes, pitiful, helpless giant. Because we literally we can bring down the world with our own irresponsibility. This is not hyperbole at all. I mean, this is what I do for a living.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I would tell people, look, please own insurance. Go buy gold. I have never been a gold bug all my life. But since this radical polemic has occurred, since we had the greatest partisanship since 1861 in this country, and all the historians know it, and you got to go there, we need to own some insurance. I'm telling people, own gold, even up here.
Jim, you're beginning to sound like that former Fox News guy who recommended the sale and purchase of gold in adverts.
Well, all I can tell you is that I've never voted the way a lot of those guys do. And
I'm teasing you.
I'm not allowed to say that I've leaned leftward because you're not allowed to talk about that on our network. But the canceled checks from who I've given money to certainly would indicate that that's what I've done. In the old days, when I was a person.
Indeed. Jim Cramer, as ever, thank you for your insights. And, of course, you can see much more of Mr. Cramer on his CNBC programme Mad Money, which airs each day.